Hey, I'm Lilly Ross.
And I'm Gabe Freedman.
And we're back with our first episode of the JagCast, where we're talking about how Marvel movies aren't really cinema, but that doesn't necessarily make them bad.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe has grossed over $22 billion worldwide, making it one of the greatest money-making movie franchises ever produced. Audiences have praised the films for their spectacular, action-packed narratives with relatable and lovable characters. There is still a debate, however, with the central question being, is Marvel cinema?
Martin Scorsese, the director behind films such as Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, and most recently The Irishman, which was nominated for Best Picture at the 92nd Academy Awards, stated in an interview with Empire magazine a controversial opinion on the MCU. I don't see them, I tried, but that's not cinema.
Can he really say that, though? I guess that's kind of going back to our question, what is cinema?
My personal opinion on cinema is that it's something that really makes a viewer think. But it may or may not tell a story, or it may tell a story in a way that a viewer really has to think about how that story is told. Maybe it tells a story, but it's something that the viewer has to really think on. Like, I can look at a scene, and you can look at a scene, and we can both have completely different ideas of what the story is, and they both could be right because it's just up for grabs.
Like, I've always just had the thought, enjoy it. You don't have to label everything. Like, a movie is a movie. You can't, discredit something for not being cinema. Because, how can one definition determine what cinema is?
Yeah.
Cinema should be the broad spectrum of everything, in my opinion.
I mean, when you Google the definition of cinema, it's just like anything in the film industry, anything produced under the film industry. So, your commercial about, your pain medicine and Marvel movies and anything by Martin Scorsese are all under the umbrella of cinematic, which I just don't really think is right. I'm thinking what defines cinema is something that makes you think, and Marvel movies are more like brain candy, and they tell a story without a lot of encryption. There's not a lot of, I'm not really sure what's going on here, I almost want to watch that scene back. And I think in the general sense, Marvel movies do fall under cinema. I just mean, are they just simply retelling the stories? Sure, they have some cinematic elements, but are they as a whole something so visually appealing that I'm like, wow, that was insane, I need to watch that again?
Some people would describe the Marvel movies as completely cinematic, with cinematic shots and explosions, and something like that you really can only enjoy, or not only enjoy, but really it's best to enjoy in a movie theater where you get the full cinematic experience.
I just feel like something that's really cinematic, I almost want to watch again because it was confusing. And sometimes that's not good. Marvel movies follow the hero's journey pretty much to a T. Superhero gets his powers, he's called to action, he probably is going to refuse it initially and be like, no, I can't do that, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not good enough, or something. And then he's going to go through all of these trials, and his belly of the beast will be something like, he lost all his friends, or if he doesn't do this one thing, then all of his family will die, or he has to make some big choice, and then that choice will end him up with the resolution, whatever that may be. So it is really Martin Scorsese says in his article, is that cinema is an art that brings you the unexpected, and in superhero movies, nothing is at risk. So I think that's what he's trying to prove, is that maybe Marvel movies aren't cinematic because they're very predictable.
I mean, being predictable shouldn't be a determining factor of all this. And back to with everything, how Marvel is kind of like a carbon copy of each one, and it's changing a few things. Isn't that what all art is? All art is reused over and over and over. Any movie, you could take
any movie can be watered down to a baseline story.
So who are we to say Ant-Man isn't some spectacular movie? Because I could just say it's about the superhero who also has his daughter, and he's trying to deal with that as he's fighting a bad guy. Or I can say it's not really coming of age, but it's a redemption story of this man who's in prison, and he's trying to spend time with his daughter while he's divorced and having to deal with all these problems of getting put back into the real world after prison and trying to make a living.
Okay, you want to know what I think?
Yeah.
I think humans are literally just pretentious.
Yeah.
And I'm serious. Okay, but hear me out. I think humans want to put things in separate boxes because everybody wants to be better than the next guy.
Yeah.
And they want to say, well, Interstellar is not in the same box as VeggieTales.
I mean, Interstellar, you could say Interstellar is just like Gravity because they're both about space, even though they're two completely different movies.
Well, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
though? Like, everybody wants to be like, not everything's cinema because my taste in movies is so much better than yours because everybody wants to be better than the next person.
Honestly, I feel like that's it.
I really think that it's it because when we were talking about this before, I was saying like, okay, Marvel movies aren't cinema, and the reason why I really liked this topic was there were so many heads that turned. There were so many heads that turned because everybody was thinking I meant cinema as in they are good. And I did not mean it like that. I meant Marvel movies aren't cinema because I don't believe they follow or that they're something that I think are visually original. Like, I think they're creative in the storytelling, but I don't look at each scene and go, wow, that is something that someone put a lot of thought in. There aren't too many things going on in each scene. It's usually just like one thing happening and it's just following the action, which is great because if there were so many things going on in an action-packed or in an action movie, you would probably be confused and overwhelmed very quickly.
Yeah, like Inception at its core is a heist movie. We can all agree on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys seen Rick and Morty? Like, you know the show? Have you seen the episode about the heist and how they're making fun of how every heist movie is the same? Well, I mean, that's like every movie. My favorite movies are the ones who take like a regular theme and then adding something else to it. So Inception, heist movie, but they're doing it inside of dreams. That's like what Marvel does best. Combining genres. They're taking their overall theme and then trying to find what theme have we not touched upon yet.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. Marvel movies are based on the comic books, and I had just kind of been thinking about the comic books basically transcribed into movies. So that's really cool. And then I was also thinking about, so we all know Pride and Prejudice, right? Personally, haven't seen it, but I have seen Pride and Prejudice Zombies, which is the same thing, but they just have zombies in it. I don't know. Don't ask me why I've seen that and not the original. I was also going to talk about, we've all grown up with Marvel. We have to think also about Marvel's audience. It's not just teens and adults, it's kids too. And the kids don't necessarily have to have a perfect understanding about what's going on, but there's something to be said about Marvel movies being able to be understood by kids and adults and being enjoyed by both kids and adults. Because you can't bring adults in to go watch the VeggieTales and the adults be really enthralled, and you can't bring the kids in to go watch Inception and then be really enthralled because everybody will be either bored or really confused and eventually bored.
I mean, I think that just adds back to that. I mean, at its core, the whole thing is a business also.
Yeah.
I mean,
So, like, Inception's, like, target audience is, like, Christopher Nolan wants to make the best movie possible. His goal is to become the greatest director of all time. Take a look at Marvel, and their goal is more entertain and to make money. Their goal isn't to make some amazing story.
Right.
But they make good stories, because how do you make money? With good stories.
Disney, right? Owning Marvel. Marvel is just another handout grabbing money, and they need to keep it rolling in, not because Disney is any kind of destitute, but just because they need that they need that money coming in. And I think maybe what Scorsese was trying to say is, like, Martin Scorsese may go and use the money to create a good story, and Marvel is creating a good story to make money. I can't say that either one is right or wrong because they both are producing money, but I think where people get kind of pretentious is they're thinking, oh, well, it shouldn't be about the money, it should be about the storytelling. And maybe that's what Scorsese was trying to say, was like, I take the money to create a good story, and I'm not trying to create just a baseline good story. I want to create something that I think is a great piece of art, and I want to put it on display, and it's less about, of course, you want to worry about what your audience is interested in, and you want to know, like, what is going to make me money, but what if we thought outside of the box? The cookie cutter storytelling process is safe, but what if we took a risk? Like he's saying, nothing is at risk in a superhero movie. So he's taking that risk and creating something that's not in the cookie cutter storytelling box. And I think that may be what he's critiquing in Marvel movies, is that they are staying in this safe box. And I mean, honestly, it's not really up to the Marvel production studios. If they're still going from the comic books are basic stories.
You look at some of the directors who have directed movies like Thor Ragnarok. Taika Waititi's been in the business for a while, but he's still fairly new compared to some of them. And like, you can do so much more if you like broaden your horizons, and like that's what he did. He's done everything. So I feel like someone like him is more in tune to like bring his opinion than Scorsese, who's really just made like the same type of movie, not same type, but you know, same genre of movies every time.
The other point too, Martin Scorsese is generalizing all Marvel movies, because Marvel movies are not produced under the same director every single time.
I mean, they have the same producer, Kevin Feige, every time.
Right, they have the same producer, but not the same director. And the director really angles how the movie is going to be seen. And since it's different every time, it's still under that same style of Marvel movie. The storytelling doesn't really vary. It's still very straightforward. But there are some stylistic choices that kind of hang out with different directors.
There's other ones like Homecoming, which I would consider at the same level, just in a different way. And Winter Soldier, which is like one of the best action movies I've ever seen, but I believe they're all at the same level. And it's not like Ragnarok is some like completely different movie than everything else. Like, all of them contain comedy. Ragnarok just did the comedy the best.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think when we brought up Thor Ragnarok, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that one really does stand out to me as being more colorful, if that makes any sense. It's obviously it has that whole like 80s theme, which is really great, but I think it's more colorful comedy-wise. It's got this really fun, creative type of world going on, and it stands out because the other Thor movies are a lot more serious. They have a more serious tone, and that may be what we're thinking of whenever we're thinking of Thor Ragnarok being really original. We may just be comparing them to the other Thor movies.
Like, personally, I don't think there's any bad Marvel movie. I think there's mediocre ones like I'm gonna call one out, Captain Marvel.
No, that's bad.
No.
Yeah, okay. I wouldn't say. I'd say it's bad compared to Marvel movies.
I was literally staring at it, and I was like, "Do I bring it up?"
There are definitely bad.
But like,
movies.
okay, if you want to say that one, I would say it's mediocre. Wouldn't say it's bad. They were just trying to make a point. Like, it was supposed to be like giving them finally a female superhero, and they kind of rushed it and just wanted to say we did it rather than make a story out of it. Like, you know how I said they want to make money and to do that they have to make a good story.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they knew just by making Captain Marvel or using a female superhero that would be enough. So the story didn't matter as much in that one.
I think I've got to agree with Gabe on the sense of I don't think Marvel has produced anything bad, but I do think there are some baseline just okay movies that I'm not really like. I'm like, yeah, this is necessary for moving the story along for the entire timeline, but I'm not really, this is not something I would be interested in watching again. Moving on to another one, Captain Marvel, I don't think they do a really good job with character development, because she kind of starts off, she's very stoic, she's very much like no emotion, and it wasn't until like the second watch that I realized that they were trying to push that she had been forced to have no emotion, and that now she could have emotion, and that was the whole point of it. I really didn't get that at the beginning. I got it more as like, I do my job, I'm very professional, and then this whole thing about feeling her emotions, and I was like, wait, hold on. To sum it up, is Marvel cinema? The world may never know. I think that's where we're going to end off the JagCast episode 1.
I would like to thank everyone for listening to our first episode of the JagCast. I'm your co-anchor, Gabe Freedman, with
Lilly Ross.
We are accompanied by our audio producer, Bennett Kelly, and our script supervisor, Aiden Thomas. If you have any comments, questions, or critiques, please leave them in the Google form below.
Make sure to follow Jaguar News Network on Instagram at Jaguar News Network and on Twitter at Jaguar News Net for updates on the podcast, show, sports, and more.